Welcome back, Year 8 students, for our second lesson on Pythagoras. And it's all about finding the shorter side of a right-angled triangle, not the hypotenuse, one of the shorter sides. Now, we'll get straight into the examples. Now, you'll remember, hopefully from last lesson, that there are three formulas. That's the long version of the formula, and I'm not using that at the moment. We do need to use that if you get really tricky questions, and there are no tricky questions to be introduced yet. We're still mastering the concept. Last lesson, we were finding the hypotenuse, so we used h equals the square root of a squared plus b squared. This lesson, we know the hypotenuse, so we're going to be using this version of the formula. So let's try looking at this question and figuring out why I'm going to use this different version of the formula that has a minus sign in it. Now, let's look at our question. There are three sides on the triangle. I know the 2.6 centimeters. I know the 1 centimeter. I don't know this A length. So when I look at this triangle, I know the longest side. I know the hypotenuse. If you know the hypotenuse and you're finding one of the other sides, the formula must have the minus sign in it. So, in this case, a is equal to the square root of 2.6 squared, the hypotenuse squared, minus 1 squared. Put that into the calculator and you'll get 2.4. So, this side here is 2.4 centimeters long. Again, I'm not worried about the centimeters at this stage. I'm worried that you can get the actual correct length. Now, something I do want to point out is that if you did this question like this and put 1 squared minus 2.6 squared, the calculator would come up with math error. That's the calculator's way of saying there is no answer to this question. And the reason there's no answer is when you look under the square root sign, 1 squared minus 2.6 squared, if you try that in the calculator without the square root sign, you'll actually get a negative answer. And we can't take the square root of a negative number. So when you're using this shortcut with the minus sign, the order that you put the numbers under the square root sign is really important. You must have the biggest one, the hypotenuse, first. If you don't, you're going to get the wrong answer, or you won't get an answer, you'll get a math error. Let's try our second one. Do you need to write the formula down? No, you don't, but I'm putting it here for you. Let's look at the question. We know that side there. Hey, that's the hypotenuse, the longest side. We know the longest side. If you're trying to find the longest side, you use the plus formula, but if you know the longest side, you're using the minus formula. So this question will be a equals the square root of 17 squared minus 15 squared. Put that into the calculator and you'll get 8. So in this question, a equals 8 kilometers. Again, I'm not worried about the kilometers. I'm worried about you getting the number 8 for that missing length. Looking at our next example, the side that we're looking for, A, is that the longest side or the shorter side? Well, it's definitely a shorter side. It's actually the shortest side on this triangle. If you know the longest side, that's the hypotenuse. We know the hypotenuse. We're using the minus formula when you're trying to find a shorter side length. So A equals the square root of 40 squared minus 29 squared. And that's the first line of working that I'm looking for you to get a mark. Put that into your calculator, the square root of 40 squared minus 29 squared. And if I round it to 1 decimal place, the answer is 27.5, and it's millimeters for this one. But notice I've rounded it to 1 decimal place. The question didn't say to round it to 1 decimal place. I chose to do that. And you're allowed to do that. Unless the instructions tell you how many decimal places to round it to, you can choose. But just understand that when you're doing questions like this, you're not always going to get nice, neat, whole number answers or answers with 1 decimal place. You can get very messy decimal answers, and you need to then round them off if you want to write them in an easier way. Well, it's time for you to try doing some questions from the worksheet. See how you go. There are quite a few questions, and I want you to do the odd-numbered questions. If you want to do the even-numbered questions too, that's fine. But you need to do at least the odd-numbered questions. Remember, with all of these questions, you'll be finding a shorter side. So you're going to be using, for this exercise, the minus. And one more thing, I might just make up a question here so you can see it. Here's my question. This can be a right angle triangle. This can be 11. This can be 5. And this I'll call x. Notice I didn't call the side length A. So when you do a question like this, it's going to be x, the side I'm looking for is one of the shorter sides, the square root of 11 squared minus 5 squared. Put that into your calculator, and if I round it to one decimal place, the answer will be 9.8. So that missing side length is 9.8 units long. If you look at the solutions for these questions, which are included in your booklet, it'll be set out differently. So you're just focusing on, did I get the same answer because I want to get it quickly, using just 2 lines of working. Have fun and enjoy the experience.